Amen. The upshot of a passage like this can be taken in some very difficult directions. This is where interpretation is necessary to help us understand the inner meaning of passages that seem to be so interesting and difficult for us. This is not the normal Jesus we're used to, like, for example, the story of the prodigal son, where the abundance of the Father's love is waiting for the prodigal son to come back. Here we see a Jesus that's a different side of Jesus, and we really see the truth that he was fully human. This is the fully human Jesus. This is the hangry Jesus, as I mentioned. This is the Jesus who's tired, wants a break, wants a retreat. He's gone up north, so to speak. He's gone to Telluride to get away for a while from all the busyness and ministry of the Sea of Galilee region. He's gone to a different territory. It's called the Syro-Phoenician. It's what we would call today Syria. It's to the east of the Sea of Galilee, the northeast of the Sea of Galilee. It's a desert region. He's gone to get away from the people. And sure enough, as so often happens with Jesus, he's a magnet for people. He's a light-filled being. He's an awakened one. People are drawn to him like a magnet. He has such profound, wise teaching, and he's got a reputation that follows him even to the next state, the next county, the next country. A reputation for doing something that was in high demand for all of human history. He has a reputation of having energy that can heal people of all sorts of things. And even to this day, we'll pay big money for doctors who have healing energy and skills and knowledge. Some doctors are extraordinary healers. I was doing my annual physical a couple of years ago with a man I didn't know. He was my doctor of record, but like at these big doctor facilities, they just rotate, so you never know who you're going to get. So I take my shirt off, and he's doing the stethoscope, and he puts his hand on my back, and he puts his other hand on my arm. And I was going through a difficult time at the time, and just within 10 seconds I start to cry. I felt his energy flowing through me. This man had the gift of healing. Perhaps some of you have that gift as well. You don't have to be a doctor to have the gift of healing, but Jesus had the gift of healing. And isn't it true that we would pay for anything, pay every penny? We'd go into debt to help ourselves, right? When it comes to medical needs. We would expend no cost, save nothing to get better. All the more when it comes to our children, right? You'd give your own blood, you'd give your own life, you'd give your half of your heart if you could. You'd give your liver, you'd give your spleen, you'd give your brain to your kid if you had to. You'd do that, wouldn't you? I know you would. Most of us would die for our children or grandchildren if it came to it. We would do anything to get our kids better. I know that in a church like this size, there's people who have children who have medical needs. It's not uncommon. And we would do anything, pay any price for that healing. And just as it is today, as it has been throughout human history, people will pay gold for health and wellness. So when you have the gift of healing, and you have a track record of healing the hardest cases, people call on your door and knock on your door at all hours of the day saying, can you do something for my sister, for my brother, for my wife, for my child? Can you do something? So we can understand the impulse and the courage of this mother who wanted her daughter healed. So there's 2 points that I would love for you to take home today. And they're very simple points. The power of humility, and the creativity of desperation. The power of humility and the creativity of desperation. Now, if you haven't gotten that phone call from the doctor's office or from the oncology department. Perhaps you've had other situations where you've panicked in a moment of desperation. A couple years ago, we were about to get married, Marcia and I. We got married in Aspen. We should have gotten married in Telluride, right here, but we got married in Aspen. 2 days before we were going to leave, we had the car packed up with everything, for the wedding. We're going to drive up to Aspen. Got a phone call from Marcia's daughter, Allison. Panicked. I'm at the doctor. He says we need to go to the hospital right away. He thinks Reese has leukemia. Reese was 2 years old. I was upstairs reading but napping at the same time, and I hear this scream from downstairs, and Marcia says, "Get down here." We drive very fast. I couldn't drive fast enough to go pick up Eliza, the 4-year-old daughter, so they could go to the hospital. When you get that phone call, I can still remember to this moment, the drop in the stomach. Really? Are you kidding me? And then the 2-year process toward healing. Where was God then? Where was Jesus then? Isn't that what we ask? Why 2 years of suffering for that little child? Where was God then? If you haven't ever received that phone call from a doctor about your own health or about someone you love, or the phone call that says, "I'm so sorry they've died." We're all in this human journey together, and we all face these types of situations. This is really human stuff. So what lesson can we learn about this beautiful Lord who heals, but also doesn't heal? What can we learn about this beautiful Lord who was a bit rude, but then changed his mind because he was inspired by her courage and her humility? The power of humility and the creativity of desperation. Let's look at the text real quickly, just for a moment, and see where the humility shows up. Well, clearly, essentially, Jesus equates this woman, who is a foreigner to Jesus. She's not a Jewish person. So she's got 2 strikes against her, socially speaking. She's a woman making an unrequested request. In other words, Jesus didn't say, "Anyone need a healing?" She just barges in and says, "Sir." So she's a woman speaking out of turn, and she's Syrian. 3 big strikes against her. Some commentators say the reason Jesus was so rude to her, and he was rude, you can't whitewash it, was because she was a woman, and a woman wasn't supposed to speak to a rabbi without being asked. And she should have asked her husband to come and say this, assuming she had a husband. It's an interesting social twist on the dysfunction of human history for so long, putting women down. Maybe that's the case. Other commentators say she was a very wealthy woman. She was entitled. She was used to getting whatever she wanted because she had the trust fund. She could go anywhere, do anything, get anything, whenever she wanted, with whomever she wanted. She was wealthy, and wealth equals power, the ability to do. And so when you're wealthy, you walk in and say, "Hey, my daughter's sick, can you heal her?" And Jesus turns the table on this wealthy woman who is used to being celebrated wherever she comes in, whatever room she walks into. "Oh, there's Oprah." And everyone bows down. And Jesus, in a moment, transforms this wealthy billionaire, so to speak, into a common dog you can eat under the table where the dogs eat. Twist of fate. There's a lot of aspects to this passage that are interesting. And commentators have brought light to it in different ways. But for me, the thing about it is, she doesn't deny that she's a dog. Here's the humility. She doesn't argue. She doesn't flip him the bird. She doesn't resist him and say, make a scene. She literally takes it with humility. She accepts it. and says, so be it. Even the dogs eat the crumbs from the children's table. You're right, I don't belong at the table. But even the dogs eat on the crumbs under the table. That's where I belong. And that is the humility that allows the person to be prostrate. In fact, the Greek word here that she fell before Jesus is prostrate. Literally fell on her knees in front of his feet. There's humility. Here's the point. Have you ever been sideswiped by life in such a way that it cracks your heart open and you fall to your knees in humility? Perhaps for the first time, gut punched, so that you recognize you're just one of 8 billion people on this planet, a human being. We all have a bad case of the human condition. And you fall down on your knees and you recognize, this is humility. I'm a person of the earth. Humus, humility. I'm a person of the earth. I come from the earth. I return to the earth. Woe and mighty, all fallen down into the earth. It's a moment of humility for all of us to recognize. It's a beautiful moment when we get humbled by life. I don't know why we get the phone calls. I don't know why the leukemia happens or the cancer happens or the 1,000 other diseases happen on this planet. But they certainly do humble us. They keep us humble. I'm not saying there's a purpose for it at all, but I do believe it's a fruit in our lives. It is a fruit. The power of humility. The power of this woman's humility to accept what Jesus says. Yes, I'm a dog. I don't deserve your grace. I don't deserve your healing. But please, I transform that. I'll be a dog and I'll eat the crumbs. Just heal my daughter. Humility accepts the lowest things you'd never accept on your own if you weren't being humbled. It's a powerful place to be. Actually, it's the most creative place in the world, because when you've been humbled, anything's possible. It breaks all the rules of the ordinary rules. Humility is not what people expect. And it changes the game the second you're willing to lose. The second you're willing to die for someone else, it changes the game. Humility is the most powerful gift, one of the most powerful gifts in our world. And then secondly, the creativity of desperation, or the courage of desperation. Notice it was this sickness. It's called a demon. And we need to immediately clear that up, because a demon in the Greek text was their way of talking about any kind of sickness that they couldn't figure out. So if it wasn't a common bone break or a normal sickness like blindness or leprosy, these were things they could get their head around. But things they couldn't get their head around, they just put it in the spiritual realm called, she's got a demon, he's got a demon. It's the Greek word daimon. And it doesn't just mean a spiritual entity like that, the opposite of an angel. A daimon can be a thought. It literally comes from the word destiny. It was someone who could cast your destiny or control your destiny. So in this case, the fever is the demon controlling the daughter's destiny. We are filled with all sorts of things that control our destinies. Our DNA controls our destiny. Is that a demon? Well, technically, yes. But it's not the opposite of an angel that we think of with horns and, fire-breathing demon from hell. This is not to be over-spiritualized. The word demon means anything they don't understand that is happening to the physical body that shouldn't be happening, or that's wrong, or causing unwellness. Anything that's creating your destiny or shaping your destiny in a way that you would rather not it, that's a demon. So it's a mindset, it's an energy that runs on people. And in our case, we definitely now know things are so physical that the spiritual is physical. You can't separate the physical from the spiritual. And so when we're sick, it's a physical and a mental and an emotional and a spiritual thing. It's not just physical. So the creativity of her desperation is very significant, that this has been happening for a long time. And the fact that she has to go to Jesus for help shows courage, for all the reasons I mentioned earlier. She's a woman, she's from a different culture. This took tremendous courage. Desperation leads us to places that we normally wouldn't go. So when we feel this push of life to the edge of desperation. It happens, doesn't it? We don't want it to happen to anyone. We don't want it to happen to ourselves. There are the good days, the good seasons, and then there are the tough days and the tough seasons that we get pushed to the edge of desperation. What's most intriguing to me is what we do when we get to that edge of desperation. And each of us has different edges. For you, it might be one edge that looks like finances, the financial edge, and you're desperate. Ever been there? For another person, they're so lonely. They're desperate for love. They'll do anything. They'll give their heart away, even to someone they shouldn't, but they're desperate. How about the edge of employment? Ever been desperate on the edge of employment? No one's returning your calls. Indeed, not getting any hits. No one's wanting to pay you to do what you do. And the months go by, and you're sitting in your pajamas wondering, what am I going to do with my life? Desperation. How about those dear people in the Sudan right now? Starving. They say there could be 2 or 3 million people dying of starvation because of that war. Silly men running the world with their guns and bombs, killing people. Enough. And that's just one of the many wars most people aren't aware of. How about the desperation of war? Do I need to go on? Am I depressing you? Flannery O'Connor, beautiful Catholic author. If you haven't read Flannery O'Connor, do so. She wrote, "We cherish the world at the same time we struggle to endure it." We cherish the world at the same time we struggle to endure it. Especially when we get to that edge of desperation, when it comes to health. We cherish the world at the same time we struggle to endure it. We need the creativity of desperation because it's opposite. The opposite of being desperate is to give in and to die. We must be creative in our desperate moments. When we come to the edge of desperation, there is another way forward. It's a creative way forward. You may not see it, but it'll show up. Something will happen, and it'll transform the moment, and it'll give you the courage and creativity to use the desperate moment to get something that you hope for. Again and again and again, desperate moments are changed and transformed through people's efforts. So where is God? Well, let me just put it this way. This is an example, a principle. It's a principle. When I go climbing in these gorgeous mountains, and I've been starting to do my hikes, I'm getting the easy ones off. I've done Judwibi. I did Owl Gulch the other day. I went up Bridal Bell Basin to Blue Lake. I've done Sea Forever down to Wasatch Connector, down to Black Bear. Awesome. And I keep looking higher up. So I want to go up there. But I know something about myself. I know I'm not ready. Because there's principles and laws in place that if I go too high and I can't get down because my knees give out, whose fault is that? Is it God's fault? Can God come and rescue me if I get stuck up on the mountain and can't get down? No. It's the lawful nature of human beings and mountains. Those mountains have an environment totally to themselves. There's nothing that can change the fact that a 14er is a 14er. And you can't get down from a 14er easily with a bum leg. That's a law. Laws are in place on this planet, like the law of gravity. I see these paragliders coming down. They're breaking the law of gravity because they have the right tool. Laws can be transformed and broken with the right tools. We call for the helicopter to come and get us off the mountain. We have a sail that takes us down in the air as we fly. Laws can be broken, but not easily, with great cost sometimes. A miracle is a higher law breaking into a lower law. What's possible for a general in the United States military is impossible for a private. A higher being comes down to a lower level of beings, and the lower level of beings say, wow, you're a God, you can heal us. I'm a God to my dogs. I feed them every day. It's a miracle. They're like, where did that food come from? If an advanced species came to visit Earth and they had the ability to heal non-invasively, just with a touch or with a wand, we'd be like, wow, how do you do that? Every sci-fi movie I've ever seen that has pictured advanced civilizations always had someone being able to heal non-invasively. Well, if you look at the history of surgery, we've gone from scalpels to robotic insertions. We're getting there, little by little. We're getting more and more non-invasive. Pretty soon we'll just do genetic manipulation. The point is that higher beings come down, and what's lawful to us, like sickness, is broken by a higher level being. Jesus, by the way, healed non-invasively. He touched people and they were healed. People touched him, they were healed. He was a higher being from a different dimension operating under different laws. I hope you can see the principle here. It's so important. We should not be mad at God. We live under laws. The law of cause and effect, the law of sickness, the law of death. These are laws we are all under. But the resurrection starts to break these laws, breaking death. Jesus starts to break these laws with healing energy. Can't you imagine a future with such beings that could be more and more like this? I do. I wish for this. So I believe Jesus was a prototype of what human beings are meant to be. In the meantime, we live on the edge of desperation. We get the phone calls. We experience the sickness. And what we can do with it is learn the power of humility in the face of it. Not be angry and hard-hearted and resistant to God. And we can learn the creativity of desperation. Not give up. The history of this world is being written by people who are humbled by life and who have creatively found a way forward in the midst of their desperation. The history of humankind is being written by people who have been humbled by life and not given up, and who are creatively finding ways forward in the midst and face of their desperation. We are these people. We are people of faith. And Jesus shows us the way, and so does this woman. The last thing I want to share as I close is the notion of a crumb. A crumb is one of the tiny things that show up in the New Testament teachings of Jesus. He's famous for using these small little human examples of things that are small but transform. Salt, seed, crumb. The tiniest little things can transform our lives. We just need a little crumb of hope and faith and love, peace, forgiveness. Just a little crumb. Just a little crumb is all we need. You don't have to save the world. You don't have to heal everyone. Just this little crumb. And it's not just the crumb we want for ourselves. It's the crumb we can give to others. Just give a little crumb to someone in need. You don't have to save them or solve them or heal them or fix it all, but just a little crumb of your words. Maybe your tears can be a crumb. I'm so sorry. Just cry with them. Offer a crumb of your tears, a crumb of your words, a crumb of your affect. Just the way you look at someone when they're telling you their desperation. Offer them a crumb and receive the crumbs that are dropped along your journey. You've heard what I've had to say. Take a moment in the silence. How is the Spirit speaking to you today? Walk with us into the unknown, that your hand would be safer than the light, and more courageous than the strength that comes from us. It comes from you. Amen.